Most people would have sold the car for scrap without opening the trunk. Ethan Walker had no idea that a single piece of paper was about to change his life. The October wind moved through the broken boards of the abandoned warehouse as he stepped inside, carrying a flashlight. Dust floated through narrow beams of afternoon sunlight. The old building stood nearly 20 miles outside Nashville, Tennessee, hidden behind overgrown trees and a rusted chain-link fence that looked like it had not been touched in decades. Ethan was not there looking for treasure. He was looking for work. As a single father raising his 10-year-old daughter Emma, he spent most of his days repairing engines, replacing transmissions, and helping customers keep aging vehicles running a little longer. Business paid the bills. Barely. There were no vacations, no luxury purchases, no shortcuts, just long hours and honest work. 3 days earlier, an elderly attorney named Harold Benson had walked into Ethan's repair shop carrying a small envelope. "Are you Ethan Walker?" the man asked. Ethan wiped grease from his hands and nodded. "That depends. Am I in trouble?" The attorney smiled. "Quite the opposite." Inside the envelope sat a single brass key and a handwritten address. Nothing else. "What is this?" Ethan asked. The attorney adjusted his glasses. "A client instructed me to deliver it to you if certain conditions were ever met." Ethan frowned. "What client? I am afraid I cannot answer that yet." "Why me?" The attorney smiled again. "That answer is inside the warehouse." Then he left. The entire conversation felt strange. Yet curiosity eventually won, which explained why Ethan now stood inside a forgotten warehouse surrounded by silence and dust. His flashlight swept across old shelves, broken equipment, and piles of discarded boxes. Then the beam stopped. There it was. A BMW. The car sat beneath a faded gray cover near the center of the building. Even through years of dust, Ethan immediately recognized the shape. Slowly he walked closer. The warehouse seemed to grow quieter with every step. He pulled back the cover. Dust exploded into the air. Underneath sat a dark blue BMW that looked frozen in time. The paint remained beautiful beneath the dirt. The body appeared untouched. The tires had collapsed long ago. Cobwebs stretched across the mirrors. Yet something about the vehicle felt different. Important. Ethan circled the car carefully. A small metal tag hung from the driver's side mirror. It contained only 4 words. "Open the trunk first." Ethan stared at the message. "Okay," he muttered. "That is not mysterious at all." The brass key fit perfectly into the lock. The trunk opened with a metallic click. Inside sat a wooden box. Nothing else. Ethan lifted it carefully onto the rear bumper and opened the lid. A single envelope rested inside. His name appeared across the front. Ethan Walker. The handwriting looked elegant and deliberate. For several seconds, he simply stared at it. Then he opened the envelope. The letter inside contained only a few lines. The paper had yellowed with age. The ink remained sharp. Ethan read it once, then twice, then a third time because his brain refused to believe what his eyes were seeing. The message said, "If you are reading this, 18 years have passed. The BMW belongs to you now. If you can make it run again, exactly as it once did, $15 million will become yours." Ethan lowered the letter slowly. The warehouse suddenly felt very still. $15 million. The number sounded absurd. Impossible. Like something from a movie. He searched the box for additional information. There was none. No contract. No explanation. No instructions. Only the letter. A gust of wind pushed through the building, rattling loose metal somewhere overhead. Ethan looked at the BMW again, then at the letter, then back at the BMW. His first instinct was laughter. "Sure," he said aloud. "And maybe the moon is hiding another check in the glove compartment." Yet even as he joked, he could not ignore the feeling growing inside him. The feeling that this was real. Somewhere beyond the warehouse walls, evening shadows stretched across the Tennessee countryside. Back home, Emma would soon finish school and ask what he accomplished that day. Ethan suddenly imagined telling her the story. He imagined her eyes growing wide with excitement. He imagined her asking the same question she always asked whenever life became difficult. "Dad, are you going to try?" Ethan folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Then he looked directly at the silent BMW resting beneath 18 years of dust. For the first time, he noticed something else. The fuel gauge was not empty. And deep inside the darkness of the dashboard, a tiny indicator light flickered once before disappearing. The flicker lasted less than a second. Yet Ethan Walker could not stop thinking about it. He stood beside the BMW for nearly a minute after the dashboard light disappeared. The warehouse remained silent except for the occasional creak of aging wood and the distant whistle of wind moving through cracks in the walls. 18 years. Most vehicles left untouched for that long became little more than collections of rust and memories. Yet something about this car refused to fit that story. Ethan carefully closed the trunk and walked around the BMW again. Every detail raised new questions. The tires had collapsed. Dust covered every surface. Yet there was remarkably little corrosion. The interior looked preserved. The leather seats remained intact. Even the dashboard appeared almost untouched by time. It was as though someone had intentionally protected the vehicle while waiting for a specific moment. A specific person. Ethan shook his head. This is getting stranger by the minute. By sunset, he arranged for a flatbed truck to transport the BMW to his repair shop. The driver helping with the move stared at the vehicle and laughed. "You paid money for this?" Ethan smiled. "Not exactly." "Good. Because if you did, somebody owes you an apology." The joke continued all the way into town. When the BMW finally rolled into Walker Automotive Repair, several local mechanics from nearby businesses wandered over to inspect it. News traveled quickly in small communities, especially when an abandoned luxury car suddenly appeared. "It is finished," one mechanic said after lifting the hood. 18 years is too long. Another shook his head. "You would need a miracle." Ethan listened politely without arguing. Experience had taught him that opinions were free. Results were valuable. Later that evening, Emma arrived at the shop carrying her backpack and a half-finished science project. Her eyes widened immediately when she saw the BMW. "Whoa." Ethan smiled. "That was my reaction too." She circled the car slowly. "Is it yours?" "Apparently." "Does it run?" Ethan laughed. "Not even a little." Emma stopped near the driver's side door. "Then why are you smiling?" Ethan pulled the folded letter from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Emma read every word carefully. Then she read it again. Finally, she looked up. $15 million? That is what it says. Her eyes grew even wider. "Are you going to try?" The question arrived exactly as he expected. Not because Emma cared about the money. Because she believed in possibilities long before adults did. Ethan looked at the silent BMW. "I think I have to." Emma smiled immediately. "Good." That was not much of a debate. "Nope." Ethan laughed. "Why not?" Emma shrugged. "Because if somebody left a challenge sitting in a warehouse for 18 years, they probably wanted someone stubborn enough to accept it." The answer sounded so much like something her mother would have said that Ethan looked away for a moment. Some memories never completely faded. After Emma finished her homework, she left with a neighbor who often helped after school. Ethan remained at the shop long after sunset. Outside, cool October air settled across the town. Inside, bright work lights illuminated the BMW. Slowly he began the inspection process. Fuel system, electrical system, battery, wiring, hoses, belts. Every component told part of a story. Some parts had aged naturally. Others appeared surprisingly preserved. The deeper he looked, the stranger things became. Around 9 o'clock, he discovered something unexpected. Hidden beneath a protective cover near the engine compartment sat a small metal plate. Most owners would never notice it. The engraving contained only a date and a set of initials. S.A. October 12th, 18 years ago. Ethan frowned. The date matched almost perfectly with the letter's timeline. Whoever placed the BMW inside that warehouse wanted it found exactly now. Not earlier. Not later. Exactly now. As he continued examining the vehicle, another surprise appeared. The fuel tank was not empty. The fluids had been stabilized. Several critical components had been carefully prepared before storage. Somebody had invested significant time and money preserving the car. Why? For a challenge? For a prize? For a test? None of it made sense. Near midnight, Ethan finally leaned back and wiped grease from his hands. The shop felt quiet, peaceful. The BMW sat beneath bright lights like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Most people saw an old car. Ethan saw intention. Somewhere, someone had created this challenge 18 years ago and trusted that the right person would eventually discover it. The thought seemed impossible, yet the evidence sat directly in front of him. Then his phone vibrated. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Ethan answered cautiously. "Hello." A calm female voice responded. "Mr. Walker, I understand you found the BMW. Ethan sat upright immediately. Who is this? A brief silence followed. Then the woman answered. Someone very interested in whether you can make it run again. Before Ethan could ask another question, the line went dead. The call lasted less than 10 seconds, yet it followed Ethan Walker all night. After the line went dead, he stared at his phone for nearly a minute. The voice had sounded calm, educated, confident, not threatening, not demanding, simply interested. Somehow that made the mystery even deeper. Ethan checked the number again. Unknown. No identifying information. Nothing. He looked toward the BMW sitting beneath bright shop lights. The dark blue paint reflected across the polished concrete floor. For the first time, the challenge felt larger than an old car. Someone was watching. Somewhere beyond the walls of his repair shop, another person already knew he had found the vehicle. The realization should have made him nervous. Instead, it made him curious. The next morning began before sunrise. Ethan unlocked the shop while cold October air drifted through the empty parking lot. Nashville traffic had not yet filled the roads. The world felt quiet, peaceful. He brewed coffee, switched on the lights, and walked directly toward the BMW. Emma arrived an hour later before school, carrying a paper bag with breakfast sandwiches. Any progress? She asked immediately. Ethan smiled. Good morning to you too. Emma laughed. That means no. She set the food down and approached the car. Did you at least figure out who left it? Ethan shook his head. Not yet. Then he hesitated. But somebody called me last night. Emma stopped. Who? I have no idea. Her eyes widened instantly. This keeps getting cooler. Ethan laughed. That is one word for it. Together, they spent a few minutes examining the vehicle before school. Emma sat inside the driver's seat while Ethan checked electrical connections beneath the dashboard. Dust filled the air whenever they moved something. Yet beneath the dust, details continued emerging. The car had been maintained before storage with extraordinary care. Every discovery raised the same question. Why? After dropping Emma at school, Ethan returned to work. Regular customers filled most of the day. Oil changes, brake repairs, engine diagnostics. Real life continued whether mysteries existed or not. Yet every free moment brought him back to the BMW. By mid-afternoon, he completed a detailed inspection report. The list looked intimidating. Fuel system rebuild, battery replacement, electrical restoration, cooling system service, engine lubrication, countless small repairs. Most mechanics would estimate months of work. Ethan saw something different. Possibility. Late that afternoon, a black luxury sedan parked across the street from the shop. Ethan noticed it immediately because nobody exited. The vehicle simply remained there, motionless, watching. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Finally, the rear door opened. A woman stepped out. She appeared to be in her late 30s. Professional, elegant. Her dark coat and sunglasses concealed most details. She walked toward the shop with calm confidence. Ethan wiped his hands and met her near the entrance. Can I help you? The woman smiled politely. I hope so. Her voice sounded familiar. Ethan studied her carefully. Then realization arrived. You are the one who called. The woman did not confirm it directly. She simply glanced toward the BMW. It is in better condition than I expected. Ethan crossed his arms. You seem to know a lot about it. Perhaps. Who are you? She looked at the car again before answering. Someone interested in seeing whether you finish what you started. Ethan waited. The woman smiled slightly. You are wondering if the $15 million are real. Ethan did not deny it. Are they? Yes. The answer arrived instantly. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just certainty. Ethan stared at her. Then why? The woman walked slowly around the BMW. Because some challenges are never about money. Ethan frowned. That sounds like something a person with $15 million would say. For the first time, she laughed. A genuine laugh. Warm and unexpected. Fair point. She stopped near the front bumper. Tell me something, Mr. Walker. Okay. If there were no reward, would you still try to restore it? The question caught him off guard. He looked toward the BMW, then toward photographs hanging inside the office. One picture showed Emma smiling beside an old pickup truck they rebuilt together years earlier. Ethan smiled. Probably. The woman nodded slowly, as if confirming something important. Then she reached into her coat pocket and removed a small envelope. You may need this later. Ethan accepted it carefully. What is it? The next piece of the puzzle. Before he could ask another question, She turned and headed back toward the sedan. Ethan watched her leave. Moments later, the vehicle disappeared down the road. The entire meeting lasted less than 5 minutes. Yet when Ethan looked at the envelope in his hands, he noticed something unusual. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were 3 words. Do not open. Yet underneath those words appeared a second message. Open only after the engine starts. The envelope sat on Ethan Walker's workbench for 3 days. He moved it several times, picked it up, turned it over, studied the elegant handwriting, then placed it back exactly where it had been. Every instinct told him to open it. Every ounce of discipline told him not to. The instruction was clear. Open only after the engine starts. Whatever waited inside would still be there later. The BMW demanded his full attention now. By the end of the first week, the repair shop had transformed into something between a workplace and an investigation. Customers stopped by asking questions. Local mechanics offered opinions. Some were helpful. Most were not. You are chasing a fantasy, one customer said while waiting for an oil change. Another laughed. If somebody wanted that car running, they would have started it 18 years ago. Ethan simply smiled and returned to work. Arguing never fixed engines. Results did. Every evening after regular business hours, he remained inside the shop with the BMW. Emma often stayed beside him, finishing homework at a small desk near the office window. The routine became strangely comforting. Father and daughter working toward different goals beneath the same roof. One night around 8 o'clock, Emma looked up from her math assignment. Do you think the woman will come back? Ethan tightened a bolt beneath the hood. Probably. Who do you think she is? No idea. Emma considered this carefully. Maybe she owns the money. Ethan laughed. That would explain a lot. Maybe she owns the car. That too. Emma smiled. Or maybe she is testing you. The answer lingered longer than Ethan expected. Testing him. Something about those words felt important. During the following days, the BMW slowly revealed more of its story. Hidden markings appeared beneath interior panels. Serial numbers matched records from nearly 2 decades earlier. Service documentation remained tucked inside a sealed compartment behind the glove box. Every discovery suggested extraordinary planning. Somebody had not simply stored this vehicle. Somebody had preserved it with purpose. Late one Thursday evening, Ethan found the first real breakthrough. While inspecting components near the firewall, he noticed a small compartment concealed behind a removable panel. Inside sat a weatherproof metal tube. His heart immediately accelerated. Carefully, he opened it. A folded piece of paper rested inside. The handwriting matched the original letter. Ethan unfolded the page slowly. The message contained only one sentence. Great machines reveal character. Great people reveal it sooner. Ethan stared at the words. No instructions. No technical information. Just another message. Another clue. Another mystery. He folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket. By now he understood something important. The challenge was never designed merely to test mechanical skill. Whoever created this wanted something else. The question was what? The following Saturday brought cold rain and gray skies across Tennessee. Business remained slow. Emma spent the afternoon reading near the office while Ethan continued working. Around 3 o'clock, a black luxury sedan appeared again. This time Ethan noticed it immediately. The same vehicle. The same calm arrival. The same sense of purpose. The woman stepped out carrying an umbrella and approached the shop entrance. Emma looked up instantly. It is her. Ethan nodded. The woman entered and glanced toward the BMW. For a brief moment, genuine surprise crossed her face. You have made more progress than expected. Ethan wiped his hands with a shop towel. You sound disappointed. The woman smiled. Quite the opposite. She slowly walked around the vehicle. Rain tapped softly against the shop windows. The entire building felt unusually quiet. Finally, she stopped beside the driver's door. Tell me something. Ethan folded his arms. Seems fair. She looked directly at him. Why are you still doing this? Ethan laughed softly. That is an interesting question coming from someone offering $15 million. I am serious. Ethan thought for a moment. Then he looked toward Emma. She sat nearby, pretending not to listen, while clearly listening to every word. Because my daughter is watching. The answer arrived naturally. Honestly, without calculation. The woman followed his gaze toward Emma. Something changed in her expression. A brief softness. Almost sadness. Then it disappeared. That is a good answer, she said quietly. Emma finally stood and approached. Can I ask a question? The woman smiled. Of course. Did you know the person who had the car? The woman remained silent for several seconds. Then she nodded. Very well. Emma looked fascinated. Why did they leave it? Another pause followed. Longer this time. The woman glanced toward the BMW, then toward the envelope still resting on Ethan's workbench. Because they believed the right person would eventually find it. Before anyone could ask another question, she turned toward the exit. Ethan stepped forward. Wait. She stopped. What? Ethan pointed toward the BMW. Who exactly was this challenge meant for? The woman looked back over her shoulder. Rain continued falling outside. The shop lights reflected softly against the polished floor. Then she answered with 5 words that left the entire room silent. For the man who said yes. For the man who said yes. The words lingered long after the black sedan disappeared into the rain. Ethan Walker stood motionless near the shop entrance while Emma watched through the window. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Emma broke the silence. That sounded important. Ethan smiled faintly. It definitely sounded mysterious. Emma nodded. Which is basically the same thing in this story. The answer made him laugh. Yet, deep down, the woman's words continued echoing in his mind. For the man who said yes. Not the smartest mechanic. Not the richest bidder. Not the most qualified expert. The man who said yes. Somehow that distinction mattered. During the following weeks, the BMW became the center of Ethan's life outside normal business hours. Every morning started before sunrise. Every evening stretched late into the night. Customers came and went. Repairs filled the schedule. Yet the old BMW waited patiently in the corner of the shop like a challenge that refused to be ignored. Progress arrived slowly. Then suddenly, the fuel system came back to life first. After countless hours of cleaning lines, rebuilding components, and replacing damaged seals, the system finally responded. A few days later, the electrical network began functioning again. Dashboard indicators illuminated for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Emma celebrated every small victory as though they had already won. One evening, she ran across the shop holding a flashlight. The clock works. Ethan looked up from the engine compartment. The clock. Emma pointed excitedly toward the dashboard. The clock works. Ethan stared for a moment. Then he smiled. Somehow the tiny victory felt meaningful. Time itself seemed to be waking up inside the BMW. Yet the closer they moved toward success, the harder the work became. Some nights ended in frustration. Components failed unexpectedly. Rare replacement parts took weeks to locate. More than once Ethan found himself sitting alone after midnight staring at the engine while wondering whether everyone else had been right. Maybe the challenge was impossible. Maybe the car would never run again. Maybe the $15 million existed only to motivate people to try. One particularly difficult evening, Ethan closed the hood and sat heavily on a nearby stool. Rain tapped against the shop windows. The engine remained silent. Progress had stalled completely. Emma noticed immediately. She closed her schoolbook and walked over. Bad day. Ethan nodded. A little. Thinking about quitting? Ethan laughed softly. Maybe a tiny bit. Emma folded her arms. That would be embarrassing. Embarrassing? Very. Ethan smiled despite himself. Why? Emma pointed toward the BMW. Because then the car wins. The answer was so unexpected that Ethan burst into laughter. For the first time all day, the tension disappeared. I never thought about it that way. Emma grinned. You should. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Harold Benson, the elderly attorney who delivered the warehouse key, stepped inside the shop carrying a leather briefcase. Ethan greeted him immediately. I have about 50 questions for you. Harold smiled. I imagined you might. They sat inside the office while Emma worked on homework nearby. The attorney studied the BMW through the glass for several moments. His expression carried genuine admiration. You have come further than anyone expected. Ethan leaned forward. Anyone? Harold realized his mistake immediately. That was poorly phrased. It was very specifically phrased. Harold laughed quietly. Then he opened the briefcase and removed a sealed folder. I cannot answer everything. Can you answer anything? The attorney considered the question carefully. A little. Ethan nodded toward the folder. What is that? Harold placed it on the desk. Instructions from my client. Ethan reached for it immediately. Harold raised a hand. Not yet. Ethan froze. Seriously? Seriously. Emma tried not to laugh and failed completely. Harold smiled at her. Then he looked back at Ethan. My client believed some information should only be revealed after commitment becomes impossible to fake. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? The attorney glanced toward the BMW. It means people speak differently when success is close than when success is uncertain. Silence settled across the office. For the first time, Ethan sensed the scale of the planning behind this challenge. None of it felt random. Every letter, every clue, every delay, everything seemed designed with extraordinary care. As Harold prepared to leave, he paused near the shop entrance. One more thing. Ethan looked up. What? The attorney smiled. The woman who visits your shop. Ethan immediately became attentive. What about her? Harold adjusted his coat. When the engine finally starts, she will not be able to hide who she really is anymore. Then he walked into the afternoon sunlight and disappeared. Ethan stood silently for several moments. Across the shop, the BMW waited beneath bright lights. For weeks it had been a restoration project. Now it felt like something else entirely. A test. And somewhere beyond Nashville, someone very powerful seemed to be waiting for the result. By the middle of November, the BMW no longer looked like a forgotten relic hidden inside a warehouse. It looked alive, not fully restored, not yet complete, but alive. The faded dust was gone. The dark blue paint reflected light again. The interior had been carefully cleaned and preserved. Every restored component represented another hour of effort, another late night, another decision not to quit. Yet the most important part remained unfinished. The engine. Every road led back to the engine. Every mystery seemed connected to it. Every promise depended on it. One cold morning, Ethan Walker arrived before sunrise and stood alone beside the car. The shop remained dark except for a single overhead light. Steam rose from his coffee as he studied the open engine bay. For weeks he had repaired, tested, adjusted, and rebuilt. The final pieces were finally coming together. Yet something still felt incomplete. Something hidden, as if the BMW was holding on to one last secret. Later that afternoon, Emma arrived carrying a school project about famous inventors. She immediately noticed the expression on her father's face. You found something. Ethan smiled. Maybe. Emma dropped her backpack and hurried over. Ethan pointed toward a section of the engine compartment. See this? She leaned closer. What am I looking at? Exactly. Emma laughed. Very helpful. Ethan carefully removed a small panel that had escaped notice for weeks. Behind it sat another engraved metal plate, smaller than the first one, older too. He cleaned away years of residue with a cloth. Slowly the engraving became visible. Emma read the words aloud. Final inspection approved. Charles Sinclair. Silence filled the shop. Ethan looked at the name again. Charles Sinclair. Somehow the name felt familiar. Not personally familiar. Publicly familiar. Then recognition struck. Sinclair Automotive. One of the most respected automotive companies in America. A company worth billions. Ethan sat back slowly. Emma noticed immediately. You know that name. Ethan nodded. Everybody does. The realization changed everything. The initials on the earlier plate. S.A. The extraordinary preservation. The mysterious woman. The attorney. The planning. Suddenly the pieces began connecting. This car belonged to Sinclair Automotive? Emma asked. Ethan stared at the engraving. I think it belonged to somebody much more important than that. That evening, after Emma left with neighbors, Ethan searched old business archives online. What he discovered kept him awake well past midnight. Charles Sinclair had founded Sinclair Automotive decades earlier. Industry articles described him as brilliant, demanding, and deeply unconventional. More interestingly, interviews repeatedly mentioned his obsession with character. He believed success revealed very little about a person. Difficulty revealed everything. One article quoted him directly. Great opportunities should never be given. They should be earned. Ethan leaned back in his chair. The sentence sounded familiar. It sounded exactly like the challenge surrounding the BMW. Then another detail appeared. 18 years earlier, Charles Sinclair disappeared from public life shortly before his death. Several projects were reportedly left unfinished. One of those projects had never been publicly identified. Ethan stared at the screen. The BMW suddenly felt much larger than a restoration project. It felt like a final message. A legacy. The following afternoon brought another surprise. The black sedan returned. This time Ethan was waiting. The woman stepped from the vehicle, wearing the same calm expression she always carried. Yet when she entered the shop and saw the exposed engine, something changed. Not fear, not concern. Hope. Genuine hope. Ethan pointed toward the engraved plate. Charles Sinclair. The woman stopped walking. Silence filled the room. You found it. Ethan folded his arms. You knew it was there. She nodded slowly. Yes. Who are you? The question hung between them. For a moment, Ethan thought she might finally answer. Instead, she approached the BMW and gently touched the roof with her fingertips. The gesture looked surprisingly personal. Emotional even. My father loved this car, she said quietly. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. The pieces finally aligned. You are a Sinclair. The woman smiled sadly. Yes. Emma, who had just entered from the office, looked between them. Wait. Her eyes widened. You are Charlotte Sinclair? The woman laughed softly. I suppose there is no point hiding it anymore. Emma nearly dropped her backpack. Even Ethan sat speechless. Charlotte Sinclair was not simply wealthy. She was one of the most influential business leaders in the automotive industry. Yet she had spent weeks visiting a small repair shop without revealing her identity. Charlotte looked toward the BMW once more. Her expression softened. My father believed one thing above all else. Ethan waited. Charlotte smiled faintly. That the right person would always value the journey more than the reward. Then she looked directly at the engine. For the first time, her composure nearly disappeared. And after everything I have seen, I think he was right. Across the shop, the BMW sat beneath bright lights, silent but ready. Closer than ever before. And for the first time since opening the trunk, Ethan realized the $15 million might not be the most valuable thing waiting at the end of the challenge. The revelation changed everything. Yet somehow it changed nothing at all. The next morning, Ethan Walker unlocked the repair shop at exactly the same time. He brewed the same coffee. He reviewed the same customer appointments. He answered the same phone calls. Outside, November sunlight stretched across the parking lot. Inside, the BMW waited beneath bright overhead lights. The challenge remained exactly where it had always been. Charlotte Sinclair's identity explained the mystery surrounding the car. It explained the attorney, the letters, the hidden warehouse, the preservation. Yet it did not make the engine run. That part still belonged to Ethan. By now, word had spread throughout town. Local newspapers began calling. Automotive enthusiasts appeared unexpectedly at the shop. Social media posts discussing the restoration attracted thousands of views. Some people believed the story completely. Others insisted it was impossible. Ethan ignored both groups equally. Fame had never repaired an engine. Focus did. Emma found the attention much more entertaining. You are famous now, she announced one afternoon while scrolling through articles on her tablet. Ethan glanced up from the engine compartment. That sounds exhausting. Emma laughed. One article called you the mechanic chasing $15 million. Ethan shook his head. See? They already got it wrong. How? I stopped chasing the money a long time ago. Emma looked toward the BMW. For a moment, she understood exactly what he meant. The project had become something else. Something deeper. Every challenge overcome represented proof that perseverance mattered. Every repaired component represented another lesson in patience. Every hour spent together inside the shop had become a memory neither of them would ever forget. Late one evening, Charlotte returned. This time she arrived without a luxury sedan. No driver. No assistants. Just Charlotte. She entered quietly carrying a small cardboard box. Ethan looked up from his workbench. You keep surprising me. Charlotte smiled. Good surprises or bad surprises? Mostly confusing surprises. That answer earned a genuine laugh. She placed the box on a nearby table. My father kept these. Ethan opened it carefully. Inside sat dozens of photographs. Old photographs. Some showed the BMW during its earliest years. Others showed Charles Sinclair standing beside it. Several pictures captured moments inside racing garages, engineering workshops, and automotive events stretching back decades. One photograph immediately caught Ethan's attention. Charles Sinclair stood beside the BMW, smiling at a group of mechanics. Across the bottom, someone had written a single sentence. Great machines are built by hands that care. Ethan stared at the image for several moments. Charlotte noticed. That was his favorite saying. Ethan nodded slowly. I believe it. They spent the next hour looking through photographs together while Emma listened nearby. The stories hidden inside the images felt surprisingly personal. Charles Sinclair did not appear like a billionaire industrialist. He appeared like a man fascinated by craftsmanship, a man who valued effort, character, persistence. The more Ethan learned, the more the challenge made sense. Near closing time, Charlotte stood beside the BMW and quietly studied the restored engine. He would have liked you. Ethan looked surprised. You never knew me before this. Charlotte smiled. That is exactly why I know he would have liked you. Silence followed. Comfortable silence. The kind built through mutual respect. Then Charlotte reached into her coat pocket and handed Ethan a key. Different from the brass warehouse key. Smaller. Newer. What is this? Ethan asked. Charlotte looked toward the BMW. The original ignition key. Ethan froze. For weeks the car had been tested using temporary equipment and restoration tools. He had never possessed the original key. Charlotte continued. My father instructed me to keep it until the vehicle was truly ready. Ethan looked at the key resting in his hand. Suddenly it felt heavier than metal should. More meaningful. More symbolic. As though 18 years of waiting had somehow concentrated into this single object. 3 days later, everything was ready. The fuel system responded perfectly. Electrical diagnostics passed. Cooling systems functioned flawlessly. Every test produced the same conclusion. The BMW was prepared. The entire town seemed to know it. Mechanics stopped by throughout the day. Customers delayed appointments just to watch. Even Harold Benson arrived carrying coffee and an expression that suggested he already knew the ending. By sunset, a small crowd gathered outside the shop. Nothing enormous. Just people curious enough to witness something unusual. Charlotte stood quietly near the back. Emma remained beside her father. The BMW rested in the center of the garage beneath bright lights. For a moment, nobody spoke. Ethan looked around the room. Months of work. Thousands of hours. Countless doubts. Endless persistence. Everything had led here. Then he sat behind the wheel. The original key rested in his hand. The envelope remained unopened on the workbench. The crowd grew silent. Charlotte watched without blinking. Emma smiled nervously. Ethan inserted the key into the ignition. And for the first time in 18 years, the BMW was finally ready to answer the question everyone had been waiting to hear. The garage became so quiet that even the sound of breathing seemed loud. Ethan Walker sat behind the wheel with both hands resting gently on it. The original key remained in the ignition. Around him stood mechanics, customers, neighbors, friends, and curious strangers who had followed the story for weeks. Charlotte Sinclair watched from the back of the crowd. Harold Benson stood near the office doorway. Emma remained closest of all, her eyes fixed on the dashboard. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. 18 years of silence waited inside the engine. Ethan took a slow breath. Then he turned the key. For one brief moment, nothing happened. Several people lowered their eyes. Others exchanged nervous glances. Then the dashboard illuminated. Every gauge came alive. Lights flashed across the instrument panel. The fuel pump engaged. A soft mechanical hum echoed through the garage. Ethan waited. The BMW seemed to awaken gradually, like a machine remembering something important. He turned the key further. The starter engaged. Once, twice, 3 times. The engine hesitated. The crowd remained perfectly silent. Emma squeezed her hands together. Charlotte did not blink. Ethan released the key and listened carefully. Then he smiled. It was the first smile anyone had seen from him all evening. He adjusted one setting, waited a few seconds, and tried again. The starter turned. A low sound emerged from deep inside the engine compartment. Another sound followed. Then another. Suddenly, the BMW answered. The engine came to life. The first note rolled through the garage with unexpected strength. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just clear. Confident. Alive. For several seconds, nobody reacted. The entire room simply listened. 18 years of silence had ended. The engine settled into a smooth idle as though it had never been asleep at all. A mechanic near the back slowly removed his hat. Another shook his head in disbelief. Someone whispered, "No way." Emma covered her mouth with both hands. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized it. Charlotte closed her eyes briefly. Relief washed across her face. Not because of the money. Not because of the challenge. Because the sound she remembered from childhood had finally returned. Ethan sat quietly behind the wheel while the engine continued running. He did not celebrate. He did not raise his arms. He simply listened. Sometimes the most meaningful victories arrive too deeply to express immediately. Then applause began. One person, then another, then everyone. The garage filled with cheers and laughter. Yet through all the noise, Ethan noticed only one thing: the unopened envelope resting on the workbench. Slowly he stepped from the BMW. Charlotte approached, carrying a small smile. "Congratulations." Ethan laughed softly. "I think it worked." Charlotte looked toward the engine. "I would say that qualifies as an understatement." Emma wrapped her arms around her father. "You did it." Ethan hugged her tightly. "We did it." The answer made Charlotte smile. Because it was true. Nothing about the journey had belonged to one person. A few minutes later, the crowd gradually quieted again. Everyone understood what came next. Ethan walked toward the envelope. The same envelope he had protected for weeks. The same envelope marked with a simple instruction: "Open only after the engine starts." He held it carefully for a moment, then opened it. Inside sat a letter and a small key card. The letter contained several pages. Ethan began reading. The garage became silent once more. The message was from Charles Sinclair himself, written 18 years earlier. The words felt remarkably personal. Charles explained that the BMW had never been intended as a contest of mechanical skill alone. It was designed as a search for character. He believed the world had plenty of talented people. What it lacked were people who remained kind when success was uncertain. People who continued working when recognition seemed impossible. People who valued effort more than reward. The challenge had been created to find such a person. Ethan turned the page. The next paragraph changed everything. Charles explained that over the years dozens of individuals had been quietly offered opportunities to discover the warehouse. Investors, executives, engineers, collectors, wealthy enthusiasts. None accepted. Some dismissed the challenge. Others ignored it. A few demanded guarantees before even trying. Ethan was the first person who simply said yes. The first person willing to begin without certainty. The first person willing to earn the ending before knowing what it would be. Silence filled the garage again. Charles's final words appeared at the bottom of the last page. "If you are reading this, then my daughter has finally found proof that character still matters. The $15 million are yours." But the real inheritance was never money. It was the belief that dignity, perseverance, and grace still exist in the world. Ethan lowered the letter slowly. Across the room, Charlotte stood completely still. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Not sadness. Relief. 18 years of questions had finally received an answer. Her father had been right all along. And somehow, in a small repair shop outside Nashville, a single father had proven it. The applause eventually faded, but the feeling remained. People stayed inside the repair shop long after the letter had been read. Some talked quietly. Others stood near the BMW, admiring the machine that had carried a secret across 18 years. Yet the most meaningful moment happened after most of the crowd had gone home. The garage became quiet again. Just Ethan Walker, Emma, Charlotte Sinclair, and Harold Benson remained. Outside, the November sky had darkened. Streetlights reflected softly against the shop windows. For the first time in months, there were no mysteries left to solve. Ethan sat at his workbench reading the letter again. Not because he doubted it. Because every sentence seemed to reveal something new. Across the room, Charlotte stood beside the BMW with one hand resting gently on the roof. The car no longer looked like a challenge. It looked like a memory finally allowed to rest. Harold gathered his briefcase and smiled. "My work here is finally finished." Ethan stood and shook his hand. "Thank you." Harold nodded. "Do not thank me." He glanced toward the letter. "Thank the man who believed this day would come." Then he left. The shop grew quieter still. Emma sat beside her father and leaned against his shoulder. "So what happens now?" she asked. Ethan looked at her and smiled. "Tomorrow." Emma nodded. "We open the shop." She laughed. "Even after $15 million? Especially after $15 million. Charlotte smiled from across the room. The answer sounded exactly like something Charles Sinclair would have appreciated. Over the following months, life changed. Yet not in the way many people expected. Ethan did not buy a mansion. He did not disappear. He did not chase luxury. Instead, he expanded the repair shop. New equipment arrived. More mechanics found jobs. Apprenticeship programs were created for young people interested in learning automotive skills. Several scholarships appeared in local schools. Quietly, without publicity, without announcements. The community that had supported Ethan for years suddenly found itself benefiting from his success. Emma watched every step. One afternoon, she asked why he never talked about the money. Ethan smiled. Because money is a tool. What is the important part? Emma asked. Ethan looked around the expanded shop filled with people working together. What you do with it? The answer stayed with her. Charlotte visited often during the following year. Sometimes for business. Sometimes for coffee. Sometimes simply to see the BMW. The friendship that grew between them felt natural, built on mutual respect instead of status. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after the engine first started, Charlotte arrived carrying another small envelope. Ethan laughed immediately. I am beginning to distrust envelopes. Charlotte smiled. This one is less dramatic. Inside was a photograph. A new photograph. It showed Ethan and Emma standing beside the BMW on the evening it came back to life. The image captured something neither had noticed at the time. Neither was looking at the car. They were looking at each other. Ethan stared at the photograph for several seconds. Then he smiled. This is my favorite one. Charlotte nodded. Mine too. Because the photograph revealed the truth. The story had never been about a BMW. It had never been about $15 million. It had never even been about a challenge. It was about a father teaching his daughter what perseverance looks like when nobody is watching. It was about saying yes before success is guaranteed. It was about choosing effort over excuses, grace over bitterness, character over convenience. One evening, long after closing time, Ethan walked through the repair shop alone. The lights reflected across polished floors. Tools rested neatly in place. Outside, the town moved peacefully beneath a golden sunset. He stopped beside the BMW one final time. The same BMW that had arrived covered in dust and mystery. The same BMW that changed everything. Ethan placed a hand gently on the roof and smiled. Not because of what he gained, because of what he learned. Some rewards arrive as money. Some arrive as recognition. The rarest rewards arrive as proof that staying true to yourself was worth it all along. Across town, Emma worked on homework while planning for a future that suddenly seemed larger than before. Charlotte looked through old photographs of her father with a sense of peace she had not felt in years. And somewhere in the memories of a man who believed character mattered more than success, the challenge had finally fulfilled its purpose. The engine ran. The inheritance was delivered. The mystery was solved. But the real victory was much quieter. A single father had been given every reason to chase the reward. Instead, he chose the work. And in the end, that was exactly why he deserved both. If this story stayed with you, perhaps it is because we all recognize something powerful in quiet dignity, perseverance, and second chances. Feel free to share what moment touched you most, and join us again for another story where character becomes the greatest reward of all.